Hey everyone, welcome to Voices from the Mausoleum. Stephen Angel here, and with us today to discuss his directorial debut, we have Chris Skotchdopole. I'm
Yeah,
worried,
you
worried
got
about
the
your last
last
name
one
here. I'm
right,
screwing up
but
your first name.
hi.
Hi, Chris. Thank you so much for joining us.
Of course.
Yeah, so obviously, without getting too much into spoilers, why don't you give us a little introduction into Crumb Catcher and what it's all about?
Um, it's what is it? It's about a guy who blacks out on his wedding night and then is extorted by the waiter and bartender from his wedding based on something he doesn't remember doing, and they don't just want money, they want him to kind of be involved in his business product, which is called the Crumb Catcher. So it's this sort of, I don't know, I'm not really in the pitch mindset, but you could imagine it kind of goes a little kooky with the lying, etc. And then, eventually trying to like fess up and be better, I guess is the point.
Sure. Well, it certainly totes sort of walks the line between comedy and thriller. It's pretty fun. I was lucky enough to catch it at Brooklyn Horror Film Festival, which was the New York City premiere, right? And tell you, the theater was eating it up. I sort of like it was the jokes were hitting, the thrills were thrilling. What sparked sort of the inspiration for this story? What's the origins of Crumb Catcher?
Just like wanting to make the origins were sort of wanting to make a movie, really, and then sort of creating my parameters as to what I think it should be. In terms of, I think like whenever you're starting something, I think giving yourself some sort of a sandbox that you're working within. Like, so I very early on decided that it should be, somewhat like a knife in the water, or something that's like very contained with these characters. So single location and all sort of happening in real time. So that sort of narrows everything down. I mean, you can be extremely creative within that area, but it's not like, oh, and then they go to the store to get some groceries. Like, that's just not part of the rules. So, I mean, I guess at the end I kind of break the rule, but I guess rules are meant to be broken. And so, yeah, that was it. But it was really about a guy who, it's like the first scene was about a guy who didn't want to be at his own party, didn't want to be at his own wedding. And then sort of just like showing, I mean, I guess I enjoyed the idea of like, I mean, it's sort of hindsight 2020, because the movie is like, we're seeing these people, the opening is them at their wedding, taking pictures, and they're sort of they're not the couple they're supposed to be. This isn't the perfect mantle picture that they're going to like idolize through the ages. And kind of the movie takes you through this period where they finally become vulnerable and become accessible to each other, through this thrill ride. There's a sort of joke in the movie that John, the bad guy, is like, it's a conversation piece, And I do think that as a movie, it's a conversation piece to like talk through your problems. And I think that the Crumb Catcher kind of fixed Leah and Shane in some way. Whether what their fate is going to be, I think their souls have been corrected to like allow love in their life, for each other. So that's sort of like what it became. But also I had John's voice early on because I really liked the idea of like a guy that was very positive that was blackmailing you, that he didn't really think, like, he thought he was giving you an opportunity. Like just like, oh, well, this is yes, of course it's this, but look, this is this is an idea,
The ultimate used car salesman, kind of.
Yeah, I was just thinking the same thing. Yeah.
When did the sort of the idea of the Crumb Catcher kind of fall into it? Did you have this sort of like invention in mind? Was that sort of
no, not really.
Organically?
It's sort of it's. I just follow like scene by scene. I don't really. I'm not like a big architect with what I think it should be. I have like instincts of where to start and what I think the characters should sound like, and then I kind of just let them tell me what to do. And then they go on different paths, and then you're like, that's too much, and then you bring them back. But I sort of write as I go and then rewrite constantly to eventually find something that feels like concise and I don't know, like I planned it.
Yeah. Well, I was going to ask you, how long was sort of the writing process for it?
A while. I mean, it's not exactly like, I've been trying to make this movie for about 7 years. And it's not like I've been writing all those 7 years. It's not really fair to say it took 7 years to write it, but I think I had I had a pretty good draft that I was sending out to people through around 2017. And then I don't know if I'm getting the years right, but the point is that, with every time you try and you get rejected, or you don't get the money, or you don't get the actor, or whatever it is, I think the only thing that you have in your wheelhouse of control is to go back into the script and sort of live through it. And I'm a different person now than I was then, and I've fucked up many times since then, and have put my experiences of sorrow and regret and trying to be better and all these things. And I think the more that you can just live and breathe through the document, as you deal with the ups and downs, it kind of, the architecture of it was there for a long time, but then you just breathe the relationships in it, and they become much more fleshed out and real.
Yeah, absolutely. It feels like it's a bit of an organic process then. Like you said, it was 7 years. It didn't necessarily take 7 years. It was said, I like how you put it.
But I was always working on it. I have like other scripts that I was toying with, but nothing that I was like really like willing to throw down all the cards on. And it was always open on my desktop all those years. And you hear people say certain things, and you're like, oh, that's interesting. And I think that when you're writing something, or when you're working on a movie, or doing really any kind of creative act, like I try to work every day on something, whatever I'm working on, because I just kind of go stir crazy if I don't. And even if you work a couple hours or an hour or 30 minutes or whatever, at the beginning of the day, you sort of like, as you go through and you see, and you're at the like grocery store and you hear someone arguing, or you hear something, your lens of your creative process, sort of, you're interpreting the world around you, all the time, and you don't know when things are gonna click into place.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Kind of incorporating snapshots of the real world in your process.
Yeah, or just you'd see someone do something, and you're like, oh, well, that would be interesting if Rose did that, or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So Steve said this was your how do you say it? Directorial debut. So have you done other films before this? Other shorts, other full or feature length, or what else have you kind of worked on?
This is the first feature length.
Okay.
Hence the debut. But I do I did shorts, and then I've made features with friends. And I DP'd a feature, and so I've just been around the world for a long time. this was, you know, I wanted to be making this ages ago. And, you know, but then I sort of look at it now and sort of I'm like, well, I don't know if I would have done it as well if I hadn't waited, you know, in a certain way. I just look at myself when I was like 28 or something, or 27, and just like, what a fucking nightmare. That was. No,
That's
truly.
Sure.
I mean, it's still not great now, but it's still, you know, it's like better, I guess.
We do what we can with what we have. That's it.
Yeah.
We try. But yeah, it's all I don't know. I think you kind of have to, so you don't go insane. You just have to like make it like, oh, well, it was all meant to be, you know?
Yeah.
To sort of help yourself not
That's
feel
true.
like, I don't know, down.
Sure. The inner workings of the universe, right? Just kind
Yeah,
of,
exactly.
Yeah. So I know you. I think I'm vaguely remembering from the Q&A is that you talked about some of your cinematic inspirations, sort of being like Cape Fear, kind of being like what. I know this had a premiere at Brooklyn Horror. This leans, you know, certainly more thriller, definitely under the horror umbrella. Can't talk tonight.
Words are hard for us. I don't know.
I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, me too. They're difficult.
It's baby brain. So, I mean, you're 6 months in. I'm sure you're experiencing it, right?
Yeah. No, I've never been good with words. I'm like the guy I work with all the time, Larry Fessenden. He like reads my writing sometimes, and he's like, "You write like a Polish poet, adapted poorly."
Oh no.
I love that. But you were saying, sorry?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I was saying. So it's certainly thriller, falling under the horror umbrella. Like, what are sort of some of your genre favorites? Some of your either favorites or your inspirations, things that you sort of like enjoy the spirit of.
I mean, I guess I just like don't really like to know what movie I'm in when I'm watching it. And that's sort of what I tried to bring to this. Like, you know, even if like you watch, like I think Polanski was probably stylistically the most important person for this movie in terms of how he uses single perspective. And that was another like sandbox rule, is that you can only see things through Shane's perspective. And I think there's like literally, there's like one moment where it's not in his perspective. I think each character has their own small moment.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love that, because if you stay with one character, you believe the world, you believe when it turns, because you're seeing it through somebody's eyes. And then if you're cutting back and forth, it becomes like fantastical or something. Whereas if it's single perspective, it becomes almost like a nightmare, you know, that it just keeps changing, you know, like when you dream, it's like you were here and then all of a sudden your mom was on a fridge crying and you're like, what is that? So I think that's sort of that was sort of maybe the biggest inspiration for me, was that, you know, like Rosemary's Baby or something like that. Like, you know, that's a horror movie because you've been told for so long it was a horror movie. But if you watched it without knowing what it was, you would think it was a relationship drama.
Sure.
And then kind of develops. And similarly in Crumb Catcher, like there's very few clues that we're heading in this direction. Like there's like chance encounters with the villain and his other half, but it's not explicitly going in that direction, you know?
Yeah.
And I think if you were cutting around a lot, it would have been a little bit more vaudeville and less like of a seduction.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I went into this completely blind. So thank you for the screener, by the way.
Of
So I
course,
was able to see it. And so I know Steve had sent me the trailer, and I was like, I'm gonna wait. And I've tried, it's hard sometimes being in the horror space to go into anything blind, but because I like going into this, obviously it's doing the festival circuits, but I didn't see anything about it. So I went into it completely blind, and it's 100% true. It's a very similar thing to exactly like what you said with Rosemary's Baby. I went in and I thought I had no point of reference, no idea. Steve had told me nothing. And so I just couldn't imagine. So then I literally there's when we're reintroduced and we get to the villain part where things start to get really bizarre. I messaged Steve and I was like, what the fuck what? Like, it was this interesting twist. And I was like, that's kind of why I think I'm starting to get more in the mentality of like going into things blind, because they do hit you so different. And it's kind of a fun ride, not really knowing anything about it, because you don't know what direction it's going in. And I thought it was an interesting point about the shooting style and the way this was shot too, because there are so many things wrong with literally everyone in the story. Like, no one is this super nice, wonderful, adoring person that you just love so much. But I had such an easier time liking our main character that we're seeing the story through than all of the other characters, because that's the perspective that we're given. And it definitely impacted, the rest of the film and how it made it effective.
Yeah, I think about this a lot, like, in terms of like when you're hanging out with a good friend that's not the best person and you're with him, you sort of like understand what he's going through and why he's acting the way that he is. And then as soon as you like go home to your wife or your girlfriend or whoever and you say what happens, it's like, oh yeah, that was kind of fucked up or whatever that was.
Yes.
But if you stay with them, you're sort of with them in what they go through. You're sort of, you understand them a little bit more. And I think if you cut away and you're like, well, back on the ranch.
Yeah, I totally agree.
It fucks it up.
Yeah.
In the way that your empathy kind of is broken.
Yeah.
I was going to say it's sort of like forced empathy in the sense of like you are
like
sort of seeing him.
Machine.
Was that?
I said cinema is an empathy machine. I mean, that's just like what it's like more than, I mean, I guess literature definitely, but like a play isn't like that. A play is much more like, look at this circumstances that is happening.
Yeah.
Well, you're in a character's head in literature or like a film.
Of course, yeah, that's why
it's different. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's sort of like these single point of view movies are like, single point of view fiction where you're just like consumed by this person's thoughts. I mean, it's less so with cinema, but anyway, that's the idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of, you mentioned like a kind of a vaudeville kind of thing, but it made me think of sort of the fun, the pitch. Essentially, there's this pitch scene, which was super entertaining. Sort of what did you kind of hope to sort of communicate kind of through this pitch of the Crumb Catcher?
I wanted him to be like a shark, that's like circling around them the whole time.
Yeah.
And I was always just like very conscious of making it feel like the world is just spinning around them all the time.
Yeah.
And even like when John like comes into the world, it's like he's going like into the kitchen behind them, then they're in there, and then he's walking through them. Like, these are not easy things to do when you're making a movie, because producers want you to be like, well, it all happens in this room, and you're like, no, but I like when they move around and that's kind of the stuff of like what it's like to be alive and have people in your house.
Yeah.
But yeah, a shark. And also I had the like idea of the circle town from the very conception of like me having the idea of the Crumb Catcher, like that it was going to be this product. And I just wanted it. And that why I said, I mean, Cape Fear. Yeah. But it's more like that early Scorsese, like it's not really one movie. It's just like how he was so insane, like during those years, his cocaine years. And yeah, I mean, I was sort of wanting it to be like Color of Money, you know, with the pool scene that Tom Cruise is like,
Yeah.
you know, doing all that stuff.
Yeah.
What is it? The song that's playing, the Wolves of, or Werewolves of London, yeah, is playing. Yeah. So anyway, I kind of wanted to make a version of that. It's kind of a little bit more involved than that is, but yeah, that was the thought. And also then later I you know, tried to replicate that, where like after Leah gets hurt, then I just started spinning around her. So I just wanted it to be like this thing of just not really, you know, and like the sound going all over the place. You watched on a laptop or something, so you don't quite get it, but in the theater, it's quite nice. Just hearing him go behind your ears and all the stuff.
I got a little bit of that with my headphones. I
cool.
had a, you know, Bluetooth headphones in, because it was like that with like the music going up and down, almost like it moved into another space. And then sometimes it would come back. It would be a little bit louder, a little bit quieter. And like, sometimes I would almost not even notice the music, and then it would amp up a little bit. And it was like all of that movement. I think the physical motion and then the musical motion, I think all helped create this, like, it made me feel super uneasy. I was like, whatever is about to happen, I just don't think it's going to go very well. And it made me feel like I was in it's very chaotic, but it sounds like it was intentionally done that way.
Yeah, for sure. And also like just exaggerating certain things, like, I don't know, when you're in a very stressful situation, and somebody's talking to you, you're not really hearing what they're saying.
Oh yeah, it's like,
so I tried to dumb down certain lines of dialogue if the intentionality of the perspective that I was in was not.
Yeah.
Whether it's like in the Crumb Catcher scene, I shift. I guess I'm sort of full of shit because I go to Leah's perspective in that scene for a while, because she sees the threat before Shane does. But yeah, so.
Well, it adds to, like, I think the disorientation, right? I mean, you know, like you said, like, you know, if you're, for the majority of the film, if you have this single perspective, and then sort of while she's concussed and you're kind of hopping perspective there, or, you know, switching to her perspective, it throws you off, because I feel like you get sort of comfortable with like the flow and the perspective. So those moments where you do sort of just hot focus for a moment, I think just kind of adds to that, like, ramping.
Yeah, tension. The more we're talking about it, the more I'm realizing I'm completely full of shit. I go all over the place, because I do go with Leah sometimes, and then I think I just hop back and forth from Leah and Shane, really. Maybe there was one moment with John when he tells him to go fuck himself.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
I kind of decided to go with John for a moment, but I was sort of Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think it's still primary. It's more lean towards Shane, I think. Still,
no,
he definitely says majority, 100%. But yeah,
you got to steal when you can steal.
Yeah,
it's intentional. Let's just
for
give the viewers that, Chris.
Yeah, for sure.
Don't sell yourself short.
Yeah, no, but I'm saying like, oh, it never did it. And I'm just like, that's completely
nonsense. One part of the film, and I don't want to get too spoilery.
Well, I also like, I'm not a big, like, I don't care about people knowing what the movie is. I watch more often than not. I just rewatch movies because I just find watching new movies to be like stressful, and I really have to be in like a new place. I have to like be ready to watch something. I can't stand going to these film festivals because I can't watch movies. I'm really bad at it. And yeah, so I just rewatch them. And what I'm saying is that, like, I don't think you spoil movies. Like, if a movie's good, a movie's good, or like you enjoy it, and you know, I don't know. Yeah.
Fair.
So anyway, you can say what you want is my point.
Well, so in the third act of the film, the car chase, I thought was beautifully shot.
So well done. I agree. Yep.
Like, I think you achieved something that Fast and the Furious has not achieved in 11 movies. It's like a good, no shade to them. I mean, but I mean, there was some real tension. So can you talk a little bit about the logistics of the kind of the car scene and what it was like to film?
Well, it sort of goes back to the Shane perspective thing, because I really only, like, you cut outside the car when he goes like, and then you're like there, and
Yeah.
then you come back and you're like and he like turns back, and then you're seeing his POV. So
Yeah.
I think it doesn't, I boarded everything out meticulously to be always in his perspective. And like, even when we do a big cool move,
Mhm.
it like goes up to him looking at the rear view mirror, and then it's like,
Yeah.
boom. So you're imagining that you're kind of like in his head
Yeah.
as he's dealing with this. So I think it's just grounded,
Yeah.
Mhm.
which allows moments just in the car to be quiet, and you like really buy it, as opposed to like, I think if you have a lot of money, you're just like throwing shit at the wall,
Yeah.
which I love too. I mean, I just however many months ago, when Ambulance was in theaters, I mean, I had a great time watching that. That was awesome.
Oh
But
yeah.
that's just like everything in it but the kitchen sink,
That's fair.
Yeah.
I know you talked a little bit about sort of the production history of this film, right? Because you filmed it in how many different shoots was it?
I don't quite know. I mean, there were like 4 main shoots, and then over the course of a year and a half, and then there was many like, oh, wouldn't it be cool to get that shot and
Mhm.
that shot, and we'll spend the weekend doing it. I I think there's this fallacy that gets pushed at festivals that I really disapprove of, which is like I think people are so celebratory over like, I made a movie in 14 days, or like, we did it in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And it's just like, yeah, and your movie sucks. Like, so I just feel like we should break that. Like, I was raised on sets when I was a kid. I was like a crew kid.
Hmm.
And, my dad would go away and make movies for like, 4 or 6 months, something like that. Like, that was, making a movie was a whole like
Mhm.
I mapped my years of my life. Oh, that was when like he shot that movie or this movie or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
And there's this thing of like, we're going to shoot it in 20 days, and you should be happy to get it in 20 days, and I just think that it's not like, I don't think that money is really the thing that makes something good. It's like, can you sit with it and like fail and like not feel like, oh, well, we have to move on because we don't have any time. So,
Yeah.
we had signed up to do it for 19 days, a 19-day shoot. And then pretty quickly, like, I want to say a week in, I was just like, there's no way I'm getting through this.
Yeah.
And I did believe that I could do it when I wasn't lying to these people when I went in. But, when I was getting in there, I'm just like, I've like given like better part of a decade of my life to this, and I'm not like just throwing it away, or I'm not
Mhm.
just like willing to sacrifice in this way. So, I struggled and didn't have any money, and then just sort of did little bits at a time. And as soon as I got enough money to pull the trigger, I shot again, just to
Mhm.
like keep the gasoline in the tank, to keep it going. But, all those times I feel like I was editing when I was waiting. So you sort of are like, oh, these sort of stylistic things worked. And, oh, I really like that
Yeah.
pan I did. Maybe that should go here
Yeah.
too. Or so you start to really feel it in this way that, like I was talking about with the script, that it becomes more a part of your pulse,
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think like I did a different festival. I went to the one in Atlanta, and a couple of it was primarily shorts. There's a couple of feature lengths, but it was mostly shorts. And I remember like a couple of the filmmakers that came up and did Q&As at the end of these different blocks or whatever. Quite a few of them came from these like challenges where they had like, 48 hours to make a movie or whatever, or short or whatever it is. And it's like, it's sometimes, when you think about the time frame, it's like, yeah, I mean, I couldn't do that in that short amount of time, but I think it's like people try to get their stuff out there. And so they do these things to get it fast and out, and then it ends up being like, probably would have been better. Some of the better ones that I saw, some of the really interesting ones and creative ones were the ones that they'd come up and they'd be like, yeah, I've been working on this for a decade. Like, been working on this for 5 years. And it's like 15 minutes, these people who are just like taking their time.
Yeah. Well, bless those people. I mean, I also don't really disapprove of those challenges, I think,
sure.
But they're not the same thing. It's not like you've had this burning desire. Like, I'm helping a friend of mine right now do a short just because he's bled for me. So I feel like I have to like drain myself a little bit for him. And,
it's fair.
And so I've been helping him out on this thing. And I remember like 7 years ago, he was like talking about like, what if like the animation, like it was, you can see the organs and then the skin would come back and then the veins and whatever. And I was like, anyway, and then now we're making this thing, which is cool. And, but anyway, yeah, he's a type but he cares about short films in a way that a lot of other people don't. But my point is basically that, yeah, I think those challenges, things like, I remember when I was in college, like I would get challenges from a director or as a teacher being like, one shot has to be about a ball.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I mean, I think that those are good ways, but those are exercises, not
right.
They're not,
yep.
They're not the real offering. I don't think, I think that's just a way to do push-ups.
Yeah.
And stay fine-tuned, which is great. I did a movie called Miss Millie, which I love, which was exactly that. It was like a prompt from someone doing a festival. And I love it. I mean, it's great, but I would have never made it, if it wasn't for this prompt.
Sure.
But I love it, so I think that those things are great. So I'm not totally like knocking.
Sure,
and again, I think like if people like, I don't, just for me personally, I guess the thing that I'm saying is that like, I don't mind if someone's like, oh, I made a movie in a week and it was this, and that's what I wanted to do. And that's awesome. But like, I guess I just hate when it's like the industry sort of is like, well, you can shoot it on an iPhone and you could do it for next day. You're just like, okay, well, you could do that, or you could do something else. So
force constraints sort of is what.
Yeah, exactly. So it's not to judge other people, but it's just like, don't judge me,
Definitely. It's hard to rush a labor of love, right?
Well, especially if you've just like, you've been like sacrificed so much for it. You're like, I'm not going to stop sacrificing now.
Yeah. That's a good point.
What was the casting process like for you?
Aggravating.
It's fair.
Yeah. I mean, basically it all is aggravating. It's all sort of annoying. And yeah, I wrote many letters to people I admire and lots of letters back, how much they love the script, but no. And yeah, and then we had some great people who were attached, like sort of more namey talent. And I didn't have a lot of money, so it was turning into this like, okay, they're going to come for a couple days and they'll do the thing, and you should be happy with that and whatever. And I remember I was just in COVID, so it was very like, or we were all in COVID, but like it was a very it was just me in the room. So I was just like, I kind of just wanted to be the boss. Like, anyway, I sound like De Niro when he gets the pay, in Casino. I'm the boss. But yeah, but basically, yeah, no, in that way, like I just wanted to have control over it. And I just decided, and with distribution, it would be better to have those actors, but I don't think the movie would have been as good because I basically just decided to do it with my pal Rigo, who is Shane. And I sort of changed the script to be more about him or what he might have gone through. And we sort of adapted the script for a character like Shane in the movie. And then we found these wonderful New York actors. I knew John Spiridakis already. We had made a couple of movies together.
Oh, cool.
and I had originally written it for him. And then, you know, as you try to like get money, you're just like, you know, trying to pimp yourself out to these various names to, you know, it's not because I ever doubted his talent. It's just because I've always known he was incredibly talented. But it's just like, you need money to make this fucking shit. So here we are.
Yeah, money to make things, right?
Yeah, but I basically just like I've found all the money myself, piece by piece. Like, you know, I was lucky enough that some crazy person was like, I'll give you $20,000, and then that was the seeds, and then, you know, it's like a certain amount of like, you know, you get a check for 20 grand and you're like, wow, holy shit, that's a lot of money. And then, you know, maybe someone will give you 5 grand and I have 25. And then, you know, I started to think about it. I remember when I was a kid and I wanted something, I never wanted lots of presents. I wanted usually one thing, like whether it was a camera or something. It was like, camera cost this much money. So I would just like save like 50 from grandma, 50 here, 50,
yeah.
You know? and then finally I get the $600 camera I wanted or whatever. And I kind of thought of it in a similar way. You know, I just sort of like took out the thousands and I just like thought of them as like $100.
Keep yourself humble a little bit. I mean, I'm sure, you know, as sort of the support comes in, it probably puts the pressure on then as the filmmaker to like be like, okay, we can do this.
Yeah, I mean, also it's just like sort of fun. Like I ended up just getting like high, like just going like I just like was like, this is not me who's asking for money. It's somebody else that's doing it. And I just sort of took it as like an acting thing. And yeah, I'm Greek, and sort of like one of my first jobs is at a diner. So I know all these like people who own diners, or my mom does. So I just got like a list of people, and I just like went to all these diners and like pitched these people. And it was sort of hilarious in a way, like sort of like telling of, like, I felt like I was experiencing John's struggle in some way.
Sure.
And yeah, I mean, I ended up finding this guy, Nick, that he was like giving me $75,000, like just randomly. And I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. And then it ended up falling through, and I like talked to him for months, and it seemed like it was happening, and then it just didn't. But I think it was all like kind of the COVID of it all. Yeah. You know, restaurants were obviously hugely impacted by that whole situation, but in different things. Anyway, it's all the pursuit of like just trying. And I think with anything, you just got to like wake up and know that you've given some effort towards something in the future, and you feel kind of better about yourself.
Oh, absolutely. What, speaking about, you know, because I wanted to, after, you know, talk about casting, I want to ask sort of like, what's your directorial style, or how would you describe it? Like when you're trying to sort of get these either intense moments from your actors, or sort of, you know, walk that line of like, okay, this is going to be kind of a little more comedic or a little more. So how do you sort of work with your actors in getting the performance that you're looking for? Is it collaborative? What would you
I mean, I don't really think about it in like, I'm never thinking that it's a comedic moment. I like to, because I'm always worried that if you play the comedic moment and it fails, it's an ultimate failure. But if you play it serious, it tends to be funnier. And if it's not funny, it's still dramatic. So there's
gotta hedge your bets a little bit then.
That's true.
Well, I love that approach. I mean, sort of my favorite moments in sort of a comedy thriller or like a comedy horror, or are sort of like the stuff that's delivered a little more deadpan, a little more, you know, that would be.
Well, I think, yeah, I mean, even unless you're like making a, you know, sort of like a comedy with a capital C, like I, you know, if you look at like, you know, another stylist, not style, well, kind of style in a certain way. But sorry, just getting distracted. But Coen brothers, you know, like they don't play for laughs. Like they're very, like everyone's very serious. Like John doesn't think any of this is funny. You know, it's almost the disconnect between what they want that's funny. So the style of comedy that it is very like dramatic, not comedic. So basically for me, I'm just always trying to, well, we have a lot of rehearsal. We had a lot of rehearsal periods, where we like met in the park during COVID. We met in the park a couple times a week for a couple months. And, you know, it would be like that. And then I would like have Leah and Shane go on dates. And then, yeah, just sort of giving away my secrets, but it's like, yeah, going on dates, but it's more like that. And anything you can do to like make it real, or make that they can like access something that's real with a person. And I think, you know, I think it's about forging a relationship between people. And the more that you work together and the more that they're like, they have to drive to set together every day. Like that's a moment where they're like probably complaining about me. And then they can have like their togetherness at that point. And so it's that and different sort of like, you know, with Shane, he's Rigo is not a drinker. But I really wanted him to understand what it was like to like be that kind of a person. And so like we just did things where I would be like, you know, leave your phone at home and try to look up at the sky as much as possible and pretend to be drunk and get lost in Brooklyn and like try to find your way back home without knowing where you are, and like have to go to bodegas and have to like ask them things and pretend to be drunk the whole time. So I did things like that. Like I would like send them out into the world with their like little missions of like trying to be the character. And I did that with Rose too. I did that, yeah, with Rose, John, and actually not so much John and Ella, but with Shane and Rose, I did.
Oh, I love how you put it. It's you know, because it's not quite like method acting, right? But it's acting through like forming relationships and like building that rapport, right? Being comfortable with the ensemble.
Yeah, I mean, I did want it to be method, and because also like Rigo had not acted before, so I was a bit nervous. And he's fantastic.
Wow.
But it's
I would have never guessed that.
Yeah, I mean, he acted in my short that I was telling you, Miss Millie.
Yeah.
And then it was this was the other one. And he's an incredible impersonator. Like he can impersonate anyone to a T. It's pretty incredible. So I always knew that he's always performing. Like whenever I'm with him, he's like trying to make me laugh with some silly thing. So it's sort of like in his bones. And I love that his mother is an incredible impersonator. That's where he gets it from. But the point is yeah. So for me, I just really needed it to feel like absolutely real. And I think Ella was a bit she didn't. I know her so well now, so it's all love between us. But originally, she was a bit like it's a bit indulgent to like be like this, and then but she, you know, to her credit, she was like she like went into it like that, and like there would be intense scenes where he's all beaten up on the ground, and you would look over off screen, and they're like holding hands and like together, and it's beautiful. And it's not to say that they're like in a relationship, but at this moment they're able to like sort of access a togetherness or whatever.
Yeah.
You know, and I feel like you're just, I don't know. I mean, whether any of this means anything or it makes it better, who knows? Like, it's almost just like nervousness. So you're like, oh, if I'm not doing everything I could do to make it better, then it could suck. So you're kind of just try everything and see what works. And I also like I'm writing something right now, and I'm trying to like write very differently. Like I think once you're sort of as soon as you access some way that's successful or that you're able to do it in this way, I think that you should change it up and not do it the same way again. So I don't know how I'll do it another time, but maybe different or maybe the same. I don't know. Whatever makes sense.
Good way to challenge yourself. Do something.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, I'm writing a script right now, and I'm trying to like, because with Crumb Catcher, I would write every day, like, you know, like pages and pages every day, and then edit things down. But like, you know, thousands and thousands of pages I've written of that script. And now I'm sort of writing something where I like refuse to type. So I'm just like, and I just want to be able to say it out loud to people. So I'm sort of like thinking of it more like it's like at a campfire, like you have to tell the story.
Yeah.
Oh, I like that.
Which I think is interesting to kind of, anyway, just try to stretch yourself in some way. Anyway, it's all sounding slightly pretentious, but whatever. These are the inner workings.
No, that's what we like. That's what I love to hear. I know, and Angel too. I mean, I think we like to kind of hear, like, you know, the mind of the artist and kind of like what's fueling it there, you know, and the process. A lot of people get stuck on process.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, process is just a means to an end. And I just feel like you start to, well, I don't know what I'm saying. Something.
So what is next for Crumb Catcher? I know you guys are sort of doing the festival circuit. Are there kind of more festivals down the line? What's the plan for sort of like a release of some sort?
Well, we have a great sales team that we're working with very closely, and we're feeling out who loves us, etc. And we'll see. I mean, we're still sort of like, it's a hard sell, you know. I think the movie's successful in whatever way it's successful, but at the end of the day, it's like distributors need name talent to know that they're betting on something that is of value monetarily. So it's a difficult process, but I feel hopeful. I mean, it seems like audiences are responding to it, so I was really happy to get some love from Brooklyn Horror with the audience award. I was really proud to get that.
Yeah.
That's, I feel like, is the best award to get.
Yeah. That's awesome.
So we'll see. But no, I don't have any festivals right now that I haven't really like applied to many. Well, other than basically, I think like what happens is like when you're trying to sell a movie or like doing festivals, like the festival is a means to sell the movie. So you're only kind of submitting to places that allow you to sell a movie. And I was really happy to be at Fantastic Fest because they have a really good market there, and people buy movies out of there, or they like go to movies to think of them in that way. So even like Brooklyn Horror only came up because I'm friends with Justin over there. And when he saw that I got into a festival, he was like, "Oh, let me see the movie." And then I sent it, and he loved it, so it got in. Same with Woodstock. So basically, yeah. So there's lots of festivals that I've always like loved going to, but I didn't submit because I would hate to be the guy who like gets in and then says, "Oh no, thank you." So I only did ones that were like helping me achieve the sale of the movie.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, of course.
Makes sense. Yeah.
Angel, did you have a question about the festival process or?
Yeah, I mean, I obviously, like, at least I think I know that festivals have, depending on which one they have, you know, they're all looking for different things. They have different ways you have to submit. So I guess I just wanted to know like a little bit just more about that process. Is like, it's, you know, when you said the Brooklyn one, you knew somebody, and the Woodstock one, but the other one, what was the other one?
Fantastic Fest.
Yeah, that one that was when you knew you wanted it. So you just send them your film. Like, I don't know. How does that normally work?
Yeah. I mean, I submitted the film, and then, you know, you sort of just like wait endlessly for these people to watch it and to have an opinion.
Yeah.
Or like the thing that's very annoying is that like people like have opinions, but then they don't. They're like following some other kind of guidelines that are not having to do with cinema, but having to do with who they think they are. So I find the festival thing very obnoxious and annoying because I feel like, I don't know, just like committees and stuff. I just get annoyed. And I've had so many programmers from huge festivals reach out to me that are very like warm, and like after the movie gets rejected, they're like, I'm so sorry. And they're like so apologetic. Like, I wanted the movie and it didn't get in. And you're like, well, why?
Yeah.
So, you know, I don't know. It's a hard thing. I mean, I don't want to throw negativity out there with the festival stuff. You know, they obviously like fit an important bill.
Yeah.
But I think that, what do I want to say? Sorry, I'm just trying to be articulate and not just say some bullshit. But yeah, I feel like sometimes that they're not judging the movie based on the merit of the film. They're like, there's like a status quo thing happening as to like what is deemed as like, you know, what should be an indie movie coming out of Sundance, or what you know.
Sure.
And a lot of these places, like, you know, it's like how I just found out like IndieWire is no longer covering independent films out of film festivals.
What?
Their title is IndieWire.
IndieWire.
Name, right?
Like MTV. It's not MTV anymore. It's just like, you know what I mean? So
yes,
they should change their name. But the point is that like, you know, I think that with these huge festivals, like the agencies like WME, CAA, UTA, whatever, like they're funneling their films into these places and getting these slots, and then there's only a handful of slots, and then the festival wants to like push up this agenda, and it's fine, but it's also just like, you know, you just see like things with like, you know, whatever. People aren't really buying movies out of festivals anymore because they're like their criteria of what they're trying to do is not conducive to like audiences liking movies, unfortunately. So it's sort of like a bit of a bummer. Anyway, I shouldn't be down. I should be upbeat and happy.
No, I mean, this is like, you know, a real side of the industry, right?
No, it's like the festival thing is frustrating because it's ultimately like a beauty pageant, you know?
Sure. I get that. I get what you're saying.
Totally,
I mean, I think the ones like, so for the people who have like for example, the festival I went to, it was primarily shorts. And some of the differences in those is that some of the shorts are intended to get enough interest to maybe eventually go on to be feature-length films. But that's not the goal for every filmmaker that makes shorts. And so some of the filmmakers there, you know, you watch, this is exposure for them. They're not necessarily looking for that because like they have their video, like you can go watch it on their YouTube channel, you know, like it's not something that you just are only able to see because you go to the festival. So it seems like it's kind of different for different, you know, people can do these things for different reasons. And some of the people that did the ones that you, like I said, you have access to right now. Like I could send you links to plenty of the ones that I watched because they're just out there. It's more about like exposure and maybe getting somewhere to be able to do something else or something bigger. As opposed to there's a couple, one in particular that was like a 15-minute short, but their goal was to find someone interested enough to help fund to get it to a feature-length film. So it's kind of, you know, different.
Well, yeah, I mean, different folks, different, whatever this term is.
Strokes.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, doing that is important for some movies, and other movies it's not. And so anyway, I try not to be judgmental of anyone doing anything, but anyway, yeah, frustrating with the festivals. I guess this is the thing I was actually trying to say when I started ranting about something that I knew that's not what I was talking about. Is that, you know, I think as an independent filmmaker or as a person who tries to do things, you're really relying on yourself and others that are close to you that are supportive, and you're very goal oriented. That what can I do? How am I able to do this? And what are the obstacles to get there? And I feel like in making a movie, there's so many obstacles and so many different, like a lot more than other art forms. And then there's this submission period where you just stop and you like press a button and you're like, tell me if I'm good. And I hate that. I hate that because I am so like, what can I do? How can I make this happen? And then to submit to some, you know, I mean, even like the word submit is like to submit, you know? And I just am like, it just doesn't feel natural to me. And also when I don't really trust the people who are like making the judgments, or I don't know.
I know what you're saying. Yeah.
It's the complicated nature of art and business.
You know? And you do your best. I mean, I feel like when in submission things, like what I always say is that it's, if you, the most you can do is make sure that a person who make decisions has seen your film. And I think when you cold submit, that's very unlikely. That's going to happen. Even if your movie is very good, there's a very, it doesn't work. You know, it's like I know a lot of these programmers and people, and still it's fucking impossible, you know, because I've just like been around making movies for a while. So like I know these people, and still it's impossible. And like people who just like submit and they're from South Dakota and they like make a movie and it gets in, I'm just like, wow, dude, that is amazing. Like, because they got through all of those, like that. It's just the odds of it is insane, because it's crazy.
Yeah.
So I have one last question before we let you
go,
Chris. And this is probably the therapist in me. So I like to ask in interviews, when people watch Crumb Catcher, what do you hope they feel?
I guess redemption at the end, or like just the idea that this dude is going to try to be better, you know, and it doesn't mean he's going to be better. Like, I just feel like it's like he's going to try to be better. So I think for me, that's what it is. And hopefully this night and this nightmare that he went to sort of pushes him to try to be a better person, who I guess I'm talking about myself. But yeah, it's funny, you know, my grandmother is a therapist as well. And I, you know, I've had a close relationship with her my whole life. And she is always kicking me off the phone, you know, because it's like she has that 45-minute thing. You know, so it's like I'm talking. She's like, "Okay, that's good, Chris. Well, we'll talk later." You know, and that's kind of hilarious.
I swear I try not to kick people off after 45 minutes.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. Didn't you say 45 minutes?
You know, maybe you're on to something.
That's hilarious. So you didn't even realize that, but that's why you're doing that.
Listen, I'm feeling red for filth here. Jeez. Angel, do you have any more questions before we wrap up?
No, I think that's about it. Thank you again for doing this. I had a lot of fun watching this movie.
Oh, well, thanks for watching, and thanks for having me on.
Yeah, where can people find you or find updates on?
I post things on my Instagram, so cjskotch@gmail.com, or sorry, cjskotch, whatever, that's the handlebar. But yeah, you can follow me there. I don't know.
I'll put all the information in the description.
Yeah, other things. But if you guys watch it, you should hit up Letterboxd and write a review or do something.
Oh yeah,
always looking for more clout in this social world.